Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is about development of the arch of aorta. Basically, all the aortic arch derivatives, the main arteries that come out of the heart. So this video, I'll have three parts. In this video, initially, I'm going to discuss everything that happens before we get to the point of having two heart tubes so that you get a context. It'll be very brief. Then we're going to talk about obviously the development of all the arteries. That's also not going to be very long. I'm going to make it a quick and easy way. And lastly, of course, we'll discuss whatever is given in the first aid, whatever is important for USMLE as per first aid. So let's get into the video. So you want to skip this, you can go ahead to the next part. But for those who are interested, I'm going to give you a view of what has happened, right? So you obviously have your zygote, morula, blastocyst, all of that, implantation. Then you get a bilaminar jaundice, then you'll get a trilaminar jaundice, and everything related to that happens, like getting your amnion, chorion, your extraembryonic coelom, placenta formation, all of that happens. Cytotrophoblast, cytotrophoblast, basically the placenta. So that's what is happening outside. Some changes do happen on the inside too. In the trilaminar jaundice, differentiation takes place. Those are intra-embryonic changes. So what happens is, the first thing to happen is the appearance of the procaudal plate, the primitive node, and the primitive streak, right? And then you have to read about that. After that, the notochord formation takes place. There are various stages of the notochord formation. First it's circular, then it becomes like this, then it eventually you get your adult notochord. After the notochord is formed, it sends signals to the ectoderm to differentiate into the neuroectoderm and form the neural tube. The neural tube forms in the ectoderm, but then it invaginates and then it becomes like this. You have your ectoderm, your neural tube, your notochord, and then your endoderm. And whereas this is the mesoderm, right? So as we can see here, this is how the embryo looks. And we take a cross section and look like this. You have your ectoderm, the neural tube, notochord, mesoderm, endoderm. And the mesoderm has differentiated into the paraxial, intermediate, and lateral plate mesoderm, which differentiate into different derivatives. So how do we get from here to having two heart tubes looking like this? So it's definitely somewhere in the process folding takes place, but I'm not gonna talk about that because it's very complicated even for me to understand. But we're gonna see the origin of the heart tubes. So what happens is, as we have an extraembryonic coelom, we also have an intraembryonic coelom. Looks like this. All right, and on the cross section we can see it in the lateral plate mesoderm. It does not happen in the medial region. It basically happens above the procaudal plate, somewhat here, and it invaginates only the lateral plate mesoderm. So it's somewhat like that. So that's why we only see it in the lateral plate mesoderm. Alright, so we have our procaudal plate, then we have our cavity, and then here septum transversum. After the folding of the embryo, the septum transversum comes to life with the procaudal plate somewhere here only. So that's a different thing. I'm not going to go into that. Sorry. So this cavity that we can see here, that forms our adult cavities like peritoneal or pleural and pericardial. This area forms the primitive pericardial cavity. So eventually our heart will lie here. And the area which is caudal to that or cranial to the procaudal plate is called as the cardiogenic area. So here you have the cardiogenic area. And this is where what comes to lie the two heart tubes. So the two heart tubes develop in the cardiogenic area. How? The whole chemical process, God knows who has remembered that, but something happens and you have your two heart tubes. And then after the formation of the two heart tubes, there is folding and everything, and eventually it will come to look like that. Okay, so that's all I want to tell you. One more thing, first the heart tubes are outside the pericardial cavity like that, like this, but later the heart tube enters the pericardial cavity and then adult structure jaisa hai waisa. So first it fuses and then it goes inside the pericardial cavity. So that is there. That's all I wanted to tell you. Now let's get into the main topic of the video, that is development of the arch of aorta and its derivatives, aortic arch derivatives. So obviously, these are the heart tubes. You have your truncus arteriosus, primitive atrium, primitive ventricle, bulbus cordis, all of that. And then you have your aorta that come from the primitive heart tubes, which have three parts. This is called the ventral aorta. This is called the first arch of the aorta. Then this is called as the dorsal aorta. Alright, these later fuse together. Even the heart tubes fuse together. So this is this first arch aorta is actually that is there originally. Later the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth develop, as we can see here, but the first is always there since the beginning. Okay, so now the heart tubes have fused, so even the ventral aorta have fused. The fused part of ventral aorta forms the aortic sac. The unfused part remain as its horns. So you have your right horn and your left horn of the aortic sac. Then even the dorsal aorta fuse. Then the second to sixth arch arteries develop. They connect the aortic sac to the dorsal aorta. So we can see here the connection. All right. So this has happened, that stuff has started appearing. Now it slowly start disappearing. Okay, few things disappear and eventually we'll get our adult structure. That's all there is to know. Now we have to know what that is that disappears. So the first things to disappear are the first, second, and the fifth arch arteries. So all of them disappear and they leave a few remnants. Like for example, the first arch artery leaves the maxillary artery. A part of the maxillary artery comes from the first arch artery. From the second arch artery, we get our stapedial and hyoid arteries. And fifth arch artery, not mentioned anywhere, is not that important, so we're gonna ignore that. It just disappears. Okay, so now it comes to look like this. Our first, second, fifth have disappeared. Third, fourth, sixth are left out, and we have our fused dorsal aorta as usual. From the sixth arch artery, you'll get the lung buds, and from the third arch artery, you'll get your ECA, or the external carotid artery. Now at this point, I'd like to add one point. If you see, this is the aortic sac, right? We would imagine that stuff is opening into it like this, but that is totally incorrect. In a 3D view, it is dorsal to ventral. So these two open to it from one side, and these two open on the this one opens on the opposite side. So one is dorsal, one is ventral. I have forgotten which is which I'm sorry about. So that you have to remember, that they are not all opening from the same side. There is a difference. And as I said here, this aortic sac is continuous with the truncus arteriosus, and you have to read the development of heart. But in truncus arteriosus, there's formation of this spiral septum. All right, for example, this whole thing is a spiral septum. There is some sort of a spiral septum in the truncus arteriosus, which divides it into two sections somehow, so that from one section right ventricle ka blood flows, and from one section left ventricle ka blood flows. So even in the aortic sac, we get that this is truncus arteriosus, this is aortic sac. So this spiral groove here, for example, is like this. It continues in the aortic sac and divides the aortic sac into two parts, and then that makes the blood flow in such a way that blood from the right ventricle only flows to the sixth arch arteries, and the blood from the left ventricle only flows to the third and fourth arch arteries. So that you have to know the septum formation in the aortic sac, and that's how we have the partition of the two circulation, systemic and pulmonary, now in the adult heart or circulatory system. So first, second, fifth have disappeared. ECA and lung bud has appeared. Now what else disappears are the two ductus stuff. So we have a part here between the attachment of the third and fourth arch artery, which is called as the ductus caroticus, and a part here between the lung bud and the attachment of the sixth artery, which is called as the ductus arteriosus. So they're obviously, these are all there on both the sides, but what happens is there is a disappearance of ductus caroticus on both the sides and ductus arteriosus on the right side. Okay, so it comes to appear somewhat like this. Your ductus caroticus has disappeared on both the sides and your ductus arteriosus has disappeared on the right side. What else has disappeared? The right dorsal aorta. So from the point of attachment of the fourth arch artery till the fused dorsal aorta, the whole right dorsal aorta has regressed or disappeared. Okay, so all those things are disappeared. Now this is what forms our adult structures. So let us see how that has happened. Just remember this view and come to this. So you have your aortic sac, your right horn, your left horn, your third arch artery, your fourth arch arteries, and your sixth arch arteries. The left dorsal aorta, and then from here you have the fused part, right? So first we see the formation of the aortic arch. What all is forming the aortic arch? Okay, before that, let's just see the adult structure once. This is how it's supposed to look like. The aortic arch, the descending aorta, the brachiocephalic trunk, the right subclavian, right common carotid, left subclavian, left common carotid, and the internal and external carotid arteries, right? So arch of aorta is formed by the aortic sac, the left horn of the aortic sac, and the left fourth arch artery. All of this is forming the aortic arch. Descending aorta, the left descending aorta and the fused dorsal aorta together form the descending aorta. So this is first the descending aorta. Later it can form the abdominal aorta, which divides into common iliac arteries and the whole stuff. Then we have our brachiocephalic trunk. So the right horn of the aortic sac, which is later dividing into third and fourth arch arteries, that right horn forms the brachiocephalic trunk. So what will this form? The right subclavian. What is this? The right common carotid. What is this? The right internal carotid. Okay, so we have our right subclavian, right common carotid, right and left internal carotid, and we have the external carotid. So you see on the left side we have the arch of aorta, the subclavian is going like this and the common carotid is coming like this. We don't have a brachiocephalic trunk on the left side, sorry. So we just have the arch of aorta. Subclavian is not coming from the aortic arch. It's not a left subclavian artery, is not an aortic arch derivative. So here we only have your subclavian and common carotid. There's no brachiocephalic. These are the six, these are the pulmonary arteries, and we have our ductus arteriosus. So that's how simple it is. Let's quickly discuss what's given in the first aid. So they're just given the derivatives of each aortic arch. So first aortic arch, we have the maxillary artery, discussed. Second, we have the stapedial and hyoid, discussed. Third, going back to this, let us remember, third arch artery on both the sides, it's giving what? Proximally it is giving the common carotid, later it is giving the internal carotid. So that's what it's given here, common carotid and the proximal part of internal carotid. The whole internal carotid is not given by this, okay, only the proximal part. What is the fourth giving? On the left side the aortic arch, on the right side the right subclavian artery, or the proximal part of the right subclavian artery. So on the left aortic arch, on the right the proximal part of right subclavian artery. Sixth is giving us the pulmonary arteries and the ductus arteriosus on the left side. That's all was there to remember. So I hope you learned something new. I'm gonna make another quick short video but the relation of the recurrent laryngeal nerves, because it is very important and it's also mentioned in the first aid here. So that is why I would like to make a quick short video on that too, which you'll get soon. But for this video, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.